This program is sponsored by Safe Life Experience Consult Limited. Contact them for all your travel and tour needs, as well as your events.
Welcome to the conversation with Augustus. Today, we are going to look at the guidelines issued by the Minister for Chieftaincy and Religious Affairs, Honorable Samuel Kwofie, and also our guests would look at the directives issued by the Ghana Catholic Bishops' Conference. So we'll be doing this two together at the same time. You remember just a few days ago, we spoke about the lifting of restriction when it comes to churches, schools, and other things. So my guest today is the Most Reverend John Bonaventure Kwofie, C.S.Sp, the Metropolitan Archbishop of Accra. Your Grace, you're most welcome to the conversation with Augustus.
Thank you, Augustus. I'm glad meeting you again.
Thank you so much.
So what's on the menu today?
So today we would just be going in a bit deeper with our conversation we had just a few days ago. First of all, I know you had a meeting with the Minister for Chieftaincy and Religious Affairs. Could you actually brief us what happened at the meeting?
Oh, well, okay. I'm glad we can speak about this. You remember the last time our focus was on the President's address that offered us some you offered us a leeway, or how do you put it, a partial easing of the restrictions that he imposed on the country in order to mitigate the spread of this deadly virus. And so churches were happy that he is permitting us to congregate at a maximum 100 in a church at a time for worship, and of course with other things to help protect the congregants. Now, just the next day, we had also this address that the Minister for Chieftaincy and Religious Affairs also issued. And that, of course, caused some ripples. Why? Because in this address were some statements he made that were not palatable to the religious bodies or the faith-based organizations. First of all, we since that time, of course, we've engaged him in conversations to kind of understand exactly what was going on or what's going on. And there were quite one or two or three points in that document that caused a stir among the religious bodies. We asked questions. We wanted to understand exactly what he meant. Because it seems to us, and to make a long story short, it seems to us that he was meddling in affairs that were properly belonged to the churches. A good example is the communion, what you call pre-packaged communion left and then outside or whatever. It didn't sound well to hear that coming from the minister. Where that idea came from, we don't understand, because at the meeting he actually said that, well, that's not proper. He accepted that it's not proper. He wasn't there in person. His deputy was there, who had a meeting with us. But yesterday, the religious leaders had a meeting, and afterwards we were going to go to him, because there were 2-3 points. One was the question of registration of the churches, which was, you look at the document, it's just crazy. How did it enter there? And that we are trying to have a document to mitigate the spread of COVID and then you introduce another topic or completely new. Of course, it had come on the table before, but then it just introduced this topic in this document, and of course, the religious leaders were not happy about the registration of churches. And again, the explanation I heard he gave yesterday and today, the deputy minister also gave, kind of synchronized. And the point was that, well, they didn't intend any harm to the religious bodies. That is one. The thing about the communion too, I hear yesterday he accepted, he asserted that he has nothing to do, meddle himself into the affairs of the inner workings of the church, and that is not his his area of competence. And so he has also backed down or walked out of that type of proposal. So I think for us now it's good news. The other thing that the religious leaders wanted was that the 1 hour that the president gave us, the 1 hour we thought that the religious leaders requested that, why not give us 1.5 hours instead of 1 hour to hold our services. But that, of course, you know, the whole thing we have to understand, he also said that, the president himself said that the easing is in phases, systematic and in phases. You remember that?
Yes, please, I do.
Yeah. It's systematic and it's in phases. And so this phase, the religious congregation, the religious societies or organizations have been permitted to have 100 for a service, and of course, or to have 1 hour. But in fact, the next phase, it could be more than that. It's a gradualist approach to get out of this corona virus or COVID-19 pandemic.
Thank you so much for that briefing of the meeting you had with the Deputy Minister on behalf of the Minister himself. But I would want to find out, first of all, when the guidelines came out, were you disappointed in any way?
Yes, of course, that's what we're talking about. Because, I mean, how can a minister of chieftaincy and religious affairs come and tell us that we should pre-package communion and put it outside? And then bring it in. The offertory thing should be put outside. And then that's why I told you that it's hard to understand how that entered into his briefing. You know, based on it's in black on white. And so we saw it, and of course we said, but he says, of course, some might have asked him, might have told him to write it. So he did. But as I'm saying, he has just told us that, well, he has nothing to do with that. Let's forget about it and life continues. Yeah. So okay. That is where we are at the moment.
So in forgetting about it and moving forward, you had series of meetings with them before this very one, because in the last interview we had, you made mention that you've had series of meetings with the minister, with the COVID management committee before this actually, before the president came out to speak, and the guidelines also from the religious minister also came out. In all this, is it that the churches are the church leaders are the one forcing government to actually lift the ban on church activities and others?
That one I can say clearly no. We have in no way forced the government to lift the ban. If you remember, in fact, at some point when we met the president asked the churches to kind of let him know what preparations we have made to favor the lifting of the ban, the way you put it. He asked us, and then we came out to the document that was to be sent to him. And for some reason, the document just went public. Whether it can, how it leaked into the public space is hard to understand, but it happened. And then people and then some journalists misinterpreted it and said that the religious leaders were asking the government to lift the ban or on church services. But when you read the document, nothing in the document said that the religious leaders wanted the government to lift the ban. But we said, okay, government, it is not our job to tell you when to open our churches. That's what we said clearly. That is not our job. It's not within our competence as church to tell you to open the churches. But we can tell you what we have done so far, so that based on this, you decide to open the churches. I mentioned the last time, remember that the president has a team advising him, health team, and of course, the COVID team advising him how to manage this. And he has done very well consulting different stakeholders in coming out with a decision, with a statement. But what happened, as I mentioned, how to understand, it went public that the religious leaders wanted the government to lift the ban on a public gathering. It was not true. That never was the intention of the religious leaders. Yeah. So eventually, when we say, okay, this is what we have done as churches, in case you lift the ban, we are ready for this and that. And then the government took it. So the government understood or knew, the president knew that it wasn't the religious leaders who were asking him or forcing him to lift the ban. But the journalists, some journalists might have misunderstood it and then made that statement come up. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much for that explanation. But I would also want to find out in all this, when Ghana actually had about less than 100 persons affected with the virus, the country was shut down. Not totally, but some regions were shut down. Our borders were closed. Now we are over 8,000. I'm getting to 9,000. Averagely, I would say that within a week, we are having about 600 persons affected with the virus, and we have lesser number of people dying. But is it the right time for us to be opening up things whilst the numbers keep increasing?
Yeah, you know, Augustus, the thing is this. I guess the president, of course, I know he's a legal person, a lawyer, he's not a doctor. But he's advised by scientists and, of course, medical experts. They form his team, helping him to manage this coronavirus, this COVID-19. And so he depends on these people who know what and how to handle this matter. And they advise him. And of course, he speaks with the stakeholders. Every week, he's engaging other groups in order to speak with them, to listen to them, and this and that. At the end, he makes up his mind. And so it's true. At the beginning, there were not so many, so many infected cases. And then we had the lockdown. And then about 2-3 weeks later, we lifted the lockdown, and then the cases started, not that they started, the cases augmented. Now, are you going to stay locked down forever? That's the question they're asking us. Can we stay locked down forever? And so they have told us that now, what you need most to do, put on your mask. Put on your mask, your face mask or nose mask, and then have the social distancing, and then wash your hands with flowing water and soap. So if you do this, at least we are sure to stay safe. And of course, other protocols, we are sure to stay safe. And so from the point of view of government and of those who are advising him, we are being told that, look, this is what we have to do in order to stay safe. We cannot stay locked down forever. Because the thing is, we stay locked down, but the economy is also what? It's also collapsing. And then this and that. So I depend on people who know and who advise us what to do. I think I feel safer from that point of view. I cannot make a rule because I do not know how to manage COVID. But I depend on people like the scientists and the medical experts to tell me that, look, this is the way to go forward. And so let's go that way.
So the Ministry for Religious Affairs brought out their guidelines, which actually contradict a lot of things. In your meeting, did you anyway ask them to actually bring out a new guideline, since it is an official document, so that people will know that, hey, the churches are not disobeying the rules of government, but rather the two bodies are working hand in hand?
Yeah, we mentioned that, but it's also kind of the way they handle things. This question actually came up in our engagement with as I mentioned today, was the deputy minister, and of course the doctor, the medical person who advises the president on this COVID-19 pandemic. You know, how do you manage such a situation? But for them, I don't think they don't see the problem because they are kind of, you see, the churches themselves also, if you look at us as Catholic Church, we are come out with also our own, what do you call it, directives that will not, for that do not go against the outline that the government, the president himself gave, you know. The details, as I meant, 3 or 4, only 2 or 3 or 4 points that kind of raise questions in the minister's address. Yeah, just some few. It doesn't mean that there were no good points in it. There were good points in it, but some few that caused that raised questions. But then, as I mentioned, he has accepted that, well, there's something about theology, it's about liturgy that belongs to the churches. And so how it came there, I'm saying, is something that, because he didn't really seem to kind of accept, but how did it happen? Because somebody must have written the test and slaughtered in something, or they didn't do some proofreading, you know, so things like this can happen. But I am glad, and we are glad, that he has accepted. We can move on disregarding those points. Yeah.
Thank you so much. The program is Conversation with Augustus, and you are listening to us on Radio Angelus and also watching us on the YouTube channel for Conversation with Augustus. Your Grace, I would want to find out this. With the guidelines issued by the government, with their point number 14, it actually states that communion should be placed outside. And you mentioned this early on in your explanation. And the Bishops' Conference also bringing out directives as to how communion should be actually be given, how we should go for offertory and stuff like that. So in putting the two together, what are churches expected to do in this, especially we Catholics? What are we expected to do?
We are expected to do what we normally do, respecting social distancing, and of course the protocols for hygiene and also safety. That's what we are supposed to do. This is the essential. This is what is essential for us to do as church. And as I said, the man says, look, this is something, disregard it. So we have, in fact, in all our directives or letters, circulars from bishops and from the Bishops' Conference, no mention of it was done. And nobody is emphasizing that. When you go to church, no Catholic will be expected to pre-package his communion and put it outside. And how does this happen? I mean, it's hard to understand. Yeah, it's hard to understand. So he says the mistake has been done. Let's just move forward. Let's move on. Yeah.
So in disregarding what the minister and the Ministry for Religious Affairs brought out, let us actually now delve into what our bishops, are telling us to do. Looking at the first point, which talks about dispensation from Sunday's obligation.
Yep.
If you throw a bit light on this for us.
Yeah, okay. You see, everything we are doing, the human person is at the center. The safety of our worshippers is our concern. you wouldn't want somebody to come to church and then contract, be infected by this virus. And so if somebody feels that, look, for this reason, I cannot, the person is acting out of his conscience. And then we respect the conscience of this person who says, because of this, and I'm not going to go public. You get a point? And there are other people who also have some underlying conditions that do not permit them to expose themselves to potential danger, like what we are talking about. So you know it, and so you have to stay out in order not to get infected. There are people who are vulnerable because of their age. Because of their age, they are vulnerable. And so to this susceptible to these viruses that are running around here and there. And so the bishop said, okay, if you are in that condition and then you cannot come to church, you are dispensed. Your conscience says this. Otherwise, you want to come, but because of the condition, you cannot come. And so we don't force you to do what? To come to church. And so let's wait a little. At the moment, as I said, systematic and facing. The easing comes systematically and in phases. So at this phase, because of the situation, we cannot do beyond that. But eventually, probably in the next one, this and that, things will get better. And then you can come and then participate fully. By the moment, just be careful because of your condition. Just be careful and don't feel that you are committing sin because of the fact that you cannot come to church on account of your medical condition. And that's exactly what the first point is talking to us about. So people who feel that their conscience does not blame them that, oh, I'm not going to church, God is going to be angry with me, but I have a condition that does not permit me to go. Because if I go, I will expose myself to a greater danger. And then what is it? God does not want us dead. He wants us alive in order to praise him.
But before we go to this point number 2, I think we could do a bit of catechesis here. When the church, if you could add something a bit about dispensation, when does the church actually give dispensation to people?
Yeah, there are other cases where, one big one you know very well is marriage, or where. And also when it comes to ordination of a priest who probably has not reached the age that is permitted for ordination, you need to be dispensed, to be given the permission. And that's what basically it means. You are given the permission, though you haven't attained the requirement, you are given the permission to function, to enter into doing something. And that's what this was. I know it's like you lift the bar for somebody to move on. And that is what you're talking about when you're talking about dispensation. So you dispense the person from the law, so to speak, in order for the person to move on. And so there are many cases in the church's life, we have situations when we dispense people from particular laws, particular regulations, particular laws, in order for them to move on. Because it's not a fault of themselves. Maybe for this, some circumstances do not permit them to do this or that, but it's not really their fault. And so move on. You are dispensed from that, and then you move on. So that's basically what dispensation means. Yeah.
So thank you so much. You are listening to the conversation with Augustus on Radio Angelus, and also watching us on YouTube and Facebook on Conversation with Augustus. Our guest is the Metropolitan Archbishop of Accra, Most Reverend John Bonaventure Kwofie, explaining to us the directives issued by the Ghana Catholic Bishops' Conference. And also, early on, he told us about the meeting they had on Thursday with the Deputy Minister for Religious Affairs. Also, Your Grace, if we could look at the point 2 of the directives issued by the Ghana Catholic Bishops Conference, which talks about preparation of churches and chapels. I know we spoke about it in our previous interview, but if you could throw a bit light on it for those who may be listening or watching us for the first time.
Yeah, preparation of churches and chapels. Here is how to get the place physically ready for church, for worship. As the president said, you know, the president mentioned that faith-based organizations desirous to open their churches could do that on the 7th of June. But then, these are the conditions you have to meet in order to open your church to the public. And one of them was that to fumigate the place, to disinfect the place. These are two big things that the president said. Fumigate the place and disinfect it, and also put together a team, what we call the COVID team in your parish, in order to manage cases or guide and advise on cases on this coronavirus. And then the regular thing about cleaning the place or putting this thing they call Veronica buckets with water, so that people come there. When they come, they have to wash their hands with soap. And these are the things you have to get ready before the people come to your church. If they are not ready, let them not come. You cannot open your church. Get sanitizers ready so that when they come, they can use them. You know, when they come, make sure that the sanitizers are there. Make sure that there's a running water with soap, so that people can physically wash their hands before they enter the church. And then the president also requested about registering names and taking contacts of people who come to the church for a particular worship. Why does he say that? It's because once you come, you are about 50 in the room. We are about 70 in the room. And then it's found out that one of us has an infection. These names that have been given, you could do what you call the contact tracing. And then the rooms that are going to be used for people, if you need only 100 per worship. So there could be 100 in this room, but the parish has a parish hall. Another 100 can be there worshiping. Or there's you have a growth, another 100 can be there worshiping. So far as you have the availability of priests, you see. So these are some of the things getting ready to prepare your churches, prepare your chapels, prepare your halls if you want to use your halls. These are the things you have to get there in order that people can come, and then they are not going to be afraid that they are going to catch this virus.
Okay.
So that's what basically preparation of church and chapels mean. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you so much. But I would want to find out, in all this, won't it be a burden on the church when it comes to finances?
Of course, that is going to be.
Let us look at points number 5 and number 6 together. Guidelines for adoration and then the sacrament for reconciliation.
Okay. The life of the church, you know, the Eucharist is the center of our life as Catholics. And of course, we have the adoration of the Eucharist, which is a normal it's a normal part of our lives as Catholics. But then because of the COVID thing, and then the risk of infecting your friend, the bishops are saying, well, our churches have been opened. You can go in for the adoration, to adore Jesus in the sacrament. But you have to, at the same time, be conscious of the same safety and health protocols. I observe the basic social distancing, and of course have your mask on. So you can see this thing is everywhere, the mask and then the social distancing is everywhere, because we are told that in fact they are really pertinent in the whole fight against coronavirus, putting on the mask and of course social distancing. And so the bishops are saying all the protocols stated above are to be observed. Everything you have said, I mean, washing your hands and all these things, and all these things should be observed, even when you go for the adoration of the sacrament. So that's just clear, and we are asked to follow it. The other one is about the sacrament of reconciliation, where the penitent and the confessor meet. And the bishops are saying, look, give a minimum distance of 1 meter between the confessor and the penitent. Minimum. That means you can go depending on the size of the place where you are, that there is some space, physical space between the confessor and the penitent. Again, in those days, you had that thing that kind of separated the screen that separated the penitent from the confessor. It was if you have something like that, you are using something like that, it should be impervious. Where applicable, screens impervious to droplet transmission should be used. These screens must be the type that will not permit the droplets from either the penitent or the confessor reach the other person. Again, put on your face mask. That is pertinent. Put on your face mask, and so that when you are talking, speaking, the droplets will not reach the other person. So you can see that everything you're talking about, the safety of the worshiper is very important. The safety of the faithful is very important to the church. And it's kind of, it's underpinning all the directives that the bishops are giving to our faithful in this phase of the fight against COVID-19. Of course, we have spoken about the limit, the crowd, the number of people who should be in the church. We have spoken about that. The social distance that is needed, that is required for people who are in the church, either in the sitting arrangement or even when you're going for communion or when you're going for offertory. You are sending the offertory gifts. All these things. The principle is just simple. Make sure you do not infect your brother. How? Do well to put on the face mask and then observe the distance. When you are having the face mask, 1 meter is what is required. When you don't have the face mask, it's 2 meters, So this thing runs through it. And then behavior of those attending church services or attending mass, holy mass, is that the same? Wash your hands at the door before you enter. Wear the mask covering the mouth and then the nose before you enter. And when you're inside the church, wear your mask. Now, avoid shaking hands, avoid hugging, and then the singing also in groups. In fact, that's difficult for us. Why? Because to go to church without singing, people feel like, well, I didn't go to church. If they go to church, and of course you come back home, they're saying that's why you're the power. Yeah, because the singing was good. So that's going to be very difficult if you say that you shouldn't sing, So of course, the bishops say avoid singing in groups. That means a small group of about 3 or 4 people can form a choir, and animate the mass. You see, they can animate the mass. In fact, they have said people can sing solo and this and that. The only thing is the spacing is important. Spacing is important, and also the wearing of the mask is also important. Can one sing wearing the mask is another question. That so it's obviously physically it's difficult, but that's the situation where we are in now. The situation is not normal at all, and so you try to make do with what we have. So we are also told to avoid sharing personal items. Another very difficult thing to do. A pen in my hand. I said, okay, Augustus, you can take the pen from my hand. But then, if I have the virus, the pen, I could transmit it to you by giving you the pen. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. So the bishop said, please be careful. Even exchanging personal things can be dangerous. And so these things are they are basic knowledge, but sometimes you need to call people's attention to these things. And so we call our attention, the attention of people to it. And that can easily bring trouble, bring difficulty to us is the microphone you use at Mass. The microphone you use, we keep sharing. One mic can be shared between 3 or 4 people, and it's dangerous. And so you are asked that after each use, it has to be disinfected before it can be given to the other person to use. And I think this is very, very important. And I want to emphasize this point because it's one thing people will use it disregarding whatever could have, whatever viruses I have transmitted to the microphone, and somebody comes and hosts it, and then it's this. So it's another very dangerous item, and then our attention has been called that anytime you're using this, you have to be careful, very, very careful, and get it disinfected. Use alcohol-based sanitizer to clean it before somebody comes to use it. The practices are clear, at Mass, what we expect the priest to do. I think I've mentioned that already.
Yes,
what we expect the worshippers also to do. So basically, the one principle I want to emphasize again is just about personal hygiene, safety protocols. This runs through everything we are talking about. It seems very repetitive, the same thing over and over again. But that's the only way to get a point out to reach our people, so that we all stay careful and we stay safe and we stay blessed. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Most Reverend John Bonaventure Kwofie, for that wonderful explanation and also for your time. Most Reverend John Bonaventure Kwofie happens to be the Metropolitan Archbishop of Accra, and also he is the Episcopal Chair for Education for the Ghana Catholic Bishops' Conference. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for that wonderful explanation. The program has been conversation.
Thank you for having me, and so give my greetings to your family.
So I will. The program.
Bless you for your wonderful commitment to the church and to the work you are doing.
Thank you so much. The program has been conversation with Augustus Akins, and we have been speaking to the Most Reverend John Bonaventure Kwofie, the Metropolitan Archbishop of Accra and also Episcopal Chair for Education for the Ghana Catholic Bishops' Conference. You have been listening to us on Radio Angelus. My name is Augustus Akins. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
This program was sponsored by Safe Life Experience Consult Limited. Contact them for all your travel and tour needs, as well as your events.